first product we made, we actually drove a pickup truck a very far distance with these plant extracts like in drums in the back. And we got to this lab and they mixed it in, you know, with the clinical ingredients that I wrote into the formula. And that's how we got, you know, our first real prototype.
After leaving her beauty exec career behind in New York City, today's guest took her young family all the way across the country to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And once she moved there, she did what she knew how to do best, which was chat about skincare and beauty. She opened up a beauty store only to find that her normal high-performance New York skincare that she was used to working all the time just wasn't cutting it in the mountains. After realizing that she had to think outside the box, Kendra Butler started taking ingredients that were growing in the wild in her backyard in the mountains of Jackson Hole and started creating these clinical formulations that she loved, but incorporating these wildcrafted ingredients inside. These plants were known for being able to withstand this rough, dry, arid climate, so she knew that they would work wonders on the skin of the people who lived there. And Alpyn Beauty was born. I met Kendra a few years ago virtually, and I immediately fell in love with the brand. And today we're talking all about our favorite skincare products, about how we address our skin as it ages. We're talking about how the pandemic seemingly ruined her business only to then propel it. And hearing about her dramatic career pivot is honestly so inspiring. So sit back and enjoy this episode with Kendra. And if you're as intrigued by these formulas as I am, there's also a discount code included in this episode. Kendra, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I know you're a very busy woman, but I'm really excited to kind of share your story and also share your products with the audience because I think they're super special. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I like to start every episode with asking my guest, what is your first skincare memory?
Okay, so my first skincare memory is the Clinique 3-step routine. I was probably maybe 10 or 11 years old, and my mom took me to our local department store, which was like a Boscov's in Wilmington, Delaware, and I bought the 3-step routine, the cleansing bar, the toner, and then the DDML, dramatically different. Moisturizing lotion. And I remember it was so special to me, I didn't even want to use it. Like I was trying to keep it so clean, and every time I used the bar soap, I would like wash the bar soap and dry it before I closed it in the little container. But that was my first skincare memory.
I'm grinning because that's actually mine, the Clinique 3-step system. So I think I've only mentioned it on one other podcast before, but Clinique, the 3-step is my first skincare memory. I had a friend whose mom was like so cool and she was really into skincare and beauty. And you know, Clinique always, they probably still do, but they always had those amazing gifts with purchase where you could get like the bag of goodies. So her mom would spend so much money at Clinique that she would have drawers and drawers of these goodies. And like whenever I went to my friend's house, she would always send me home with a pack. And it's like, I loved my 3-step system. I was obsessed.
It was so easy to use.
Yeah, and I felt so mature and like official having this like regimented routine.
Oh, for sure. No, I mean, I think they did a great thing, honestly. Because I think that's a lot of people's. You're not the only person to tell me that. That's really funny.
Yeah,
but that's how I got
so
into
funny.
it, and like I just like I loved that routine, and I looked forward to it all day long, like my nightly regimen.
Yeah, I agree with you. So for the audience who doesn't know, you were a beauty exec kind of living the fast life in Manhattan, and then you did a complete 180 and moved to Jackson Hole. Can you tell us a little bit about what was your early career like? What was your early career in beauty like? How did you kind of get here?
So I kind of stumbled into it. It was quite accidental how this all happened, and even starting the brand was not intentional. It was kind of something that just happened. But going back to my New York City days, so I was 20 years in Manhattan in clinical skincare, and I worked for different brands. Throughout my career, I spent the most time with Dr. Dennis Gross Skincare. He is a phenomenal doctor, an amazing formulator, and I was with him for 12 and a half years. So I was very lucky to have a fantastic mentor, in the industry, because I worked very closely with him.
Yeah, and I think I told you before, I love him. I love his formulations. And it makes sense to me now after we initially had this conversation why I love Alpyn Beauty so much too, because it sounds like that really inspired a lot of your formulations. And we're going to go into how it's so wildly different, pun intended. But after you left with Dr. Dennis Gross, did you go straight to Wyoming after that, or how did that work?
I did. I had this case of corporate burnout, after 20 years and with Dennis, I really appreciated my time there. I hit this wall and I felt like I needed to do some soul searching and press the reset button on life. And although I loved Manhattan, I was just craving nature and fresh air. And my husband was in the same place. He was, on Wall Street, and we were both just like, is this the best that life has to offer? And we did something kind of bold, and we just left our corporate jobs and we relocated our family all the way across country to a little town in the northwest corner of Wyoming named Jackson Hole. The idea was we were going to go for 2 to 3 months, Amy, just like go press the reset button, get some fresh air, get some animals in our lives, some nature, and then we were going to go back to Manhattan. And 9.5 years later, I'm talking to you from Jackson Hole. So we just never left.
And what do you think you guys found so amazing there that you didn't want to get back to your lives that you built in Manhattan, which is really the dream for so many people, that kind of lifestyle? What was different and what was kind of calling you to stay there, do you think?
I fell completely in love with the community. I love the people. I love the nature. We traded taxi cabs for herds of buffalo crossing the street. When I'm stuck in my car in the morning, it's because there's an elk herd, crossing the road. It's not because I'm on 95. And for me, it was just what my soul needed. It was what my mind needed. After 2 decades in Manhattan, I was feeling high anxiety, really stressed out, and coming to Jackson Hole was almost like taking a deep breath of fresh air, the fresh mountain air. It lifted a weight off my shoulders. So that's why we never left.
I think probably a lot of people listening to this can relate. I know I live in Miami, which it's beautiful, but my husband and I have a lot of those similar feelings where, you crave that, just a different lifestyle. So you're in Jackson Hole, and I assume after these 3 months, once you decide you're staying, you guys are like, okay, well, we better get jobs.
100%.
How did that translate your career in Manhattan for both of you, actually? How did this translate into jobs then across the country?
It was really scary. It was really hard because we didn't come with security. We didn't have jobs when we moved here. We decided we would both consult. My husband started consulting a little bit, and then I had this idea to open some beauty stores in this new town and community, because every time I went to the post office, I would see hundreds of Sephora boxes just sitting, waiting for people to pick up. And yes, we still have old-fashioned post office. Nothing gets delivered to houses here.
Really?
Yeah. It's we're in the
that's
wild,
so
wild west. But so at the post office, I would see all these Sephora boxes coming in, and I was like, wow, I wonder if this town has a need for a local beauty store. So I wrote a business plan and I opened a store called Alpyn Beauty Bar. Did not have my own line at the time. I brought in 26 skincare brands, all the best in the business, a mix of clean and clinical. And I thought, this is what I'm going to do for a living. I'm going to spend my time consulting with women in this town and helping them with their skin. And then that went kind of sideways on me.
So what happened? Because I'm sure it seemed like a fantastic idea, but as we've talked about before, needs are very different in different parts of the country. So what happened and how did you pivot?
In theory, it was a fantastic idea. In reality, women were coming into my store and they were complaining of this very dry, dehydrated skin. And they said, you're from New York City, you don't understand high altitude skincare. We have more extreme climate. We have a more extreme climate, and so our needs are different. We need really, really great formulas. And it was my first time in 20 years that I saw clinical ingredients alone not be enough. And that was shocking to me because I'm a clinical girl first and foremost. I love my clinical formulations, but nothing was working and everything was getting returned. My return rate on skincare was 30%. And I had a real problem because these stores were going to go out of business.
And so how did your own skin change? Did you notice these changes at the same time? Probably that you're hearing these things, you're probably starting to see the changes in the mirror and kind of putting 2 and 2 together.
100%. So at first I thought it was postpartum because my baby was 4 months old. So I was like, okay, this is just postpartum skin. But quickly I realized that it wasn't when I saw the other women in the community suffering from the same thing. Extreme hydration, hyperpigmentation, sunspots. We're 6,200 feet above sea level. So high altitude, no moisture in the air, almost these accelerated aging patterns were starting to pop up in my stores and on my own skin as well.
And so how did you address it? Did you start bringing in other brands, or did you kind of just at that point you took it into your own hands?
At that point, I had 36 brands in the store total between skincare and cosmetics, and they were fantastic brands. I mean, the top sellers in the Sephora's, in the Ultas. So I was like, there's nothing else. Like, I'm already selling the best in the business. And I was sitting in my backyard one day, and I remember the exact moment. I was looking at the forest behind my house, and I was looking at the trees, the flowers, the flora, everything that was growing naturally. And it looks like a painting. It's like the colors are so bright. You've got the yellow arnica and the purple borage. And I was like, it was this light bulb moment. And I thought, what is growing here naturally in this community? What wild plants are growing, and how have they found a way to adjust to this extreme climate and flourish in it? Because they're not on a watering system. Nobody's feeding them or protecting them from the sun. What wild actives do we have here? And what if, just what if, I put some of these wild actives into a clinical skincare formula? Would that boost the efficacy and performance of the clinical ingredient? And would it be a solution to the women in this town that have this really tough skin, where they need help?
And so I'm sure that when you had this idea, it sounded like a great idea, but then in practice, it's like, okay, how do I get these plants from my backyard into these like clinical formulas? So what did you do? Like, how did you find people to do it for you? How did you, I'm just thinking if that were me, I would feel so lost.
I just started, it was quite the undertaking, Amy, but you just have to start. And this is something I've learned through my career. It's like, no matter how big the project looks, there's always a step one. And for me, that step one was just making phone calls. I started calling around, looking for farmers, botanists, naturalists in this town by Googling and like word of mouth. And I found a couple resources that I started meeting with, and I said, can you walk me around the forest? Can we do like a walk, and can you show me what's growing so I can start to study the benefits? And that's how it all started. We started initially with arnica, chamomile, calendula, sage, just some of the usual suspects that grow here wild. I learned how to forage them sustainably. And when you wildcraft, something I learned is if you're doing it properly, you never remove the plant from the ground. You're just taking pieces of the stems, the leaves, the berries, the flower. Depending on where that nutrient dense section is of the plant, you're taking small pieces. So the plant stays intact and living. It continues to regenerate, like you're never ripping it out of the ground. So I learned how to do this. I wrote a formula. I put a lot of clinical ingredients in the formula, your ceramides, your hyaluronic acids, your everything that I had loved and worked with over the years from my clinical background. And I mixed in some of these wild plants that I learned how to forage. And I started to give out these samples in my beauty stores. And I just started bag dropping. Like every time there was a purchase, every time a woman complained about something, I would put this cream, and it was our first product, Melt Moisturizer. It ended up being our first product in the line, but I would put this cream in their bag as a test. And within days, I knew I had proof of concept because I couldn't walk through the grocery store. I couldn't go to my child's playground without a woman coming up to me and like grabbing me by the shoulders and saying, what was that cream that you gave me? Like what witchery like is in this product? Because for the first time, all my life I've lived here, for the first time, my skin feels soft. It feels plump. My lines look reduced. Like, what is this cream? And it was crazy. I was shocked that it worked, but it made perfect sense because I was like, the only thing I'm doing different from every other skincare line in the market is I'm folding in these wild crafted plants that had learned how to adjust in this climate. And then I thought, if it works here, it's going to be phenomenal in LA or Miami and New York. Like, if it works for high altitude skin, once you take it to a more forgiving environment, it's going to be even better. So at that point, I started to get really excited.
Okay, so you have proof of concept and you have these plants that you want to incorporate into your clinical formulas. How the heck do you get someone to do it for you? Because you can't mix them all yourself.
That was the next roadblock. So I can write a formula, but I am not cooking this stuff on my stove. You know, my stove cooks mac and cheese and chicken tenders for my kids. Like, I was like, there's no way I'm that talented that I could try to find a sterile environment and like mix up this stuff. And I knew I needed a contract manufacturer. So here comes hurdle number 2. I thought it would be easy. I'm just going to make a call. I know who they are in the industry from my previous career. And I'm just going to tell them I want to ship them, you know, these extracts, these wild plant extracts. Well, that didn't really go as planned. I called 20 manufacturers of skincare brands in the United States. And I heard no after no after no. And what they all said is, this isn't the way it works in the skincare industry. Like, if you want us to create a formula, we source from the ingredient suppliers and we take arnica in the powder form and chamomile in the powder form, and then we can put botanicals in that way. That's the way everybody else does it. And I was kind of like, I know the way everybody else does it, but I'm trying to do something different. I want these fresh mountain actives, these wild extracts. I don't want something farmed or commercially planted. I want something that grows in the wild because that plant is exposed to more challenges in its life cycle. And I wanted to bring that fight to the skin and blah, blah, blah. So 20 labs said no. My 21st call, I mean, I was so defeated at this point. I was like, it's never going to happen. It was a good idea. It's not going to go anywhere. But I kept calling. And the 21st call, I think I was like falling asleep. I was like, hi, my name is Kendra. I'm calling from Jackson Hole. I have an idea. And the owner of the lab answered the phone and he said, let's do it. This is interesting to me. So we drove a pickup truck full of these because we didn't even know how to store them. We didn't know how to transport them. The first product we made, we actually drove a pickup truck a very far distance with these plant extracts like in drums in the back. And we got to this lab and they mixed it in, you know, with the clinical ingredients that I wrote into the formula. And that's how we got, you know, our first real prototype.
And then so you started selling it at your beauty store and the rest is history.
The rest is history. I still at this point, Amy did not think that I could do a line. I thought, you know, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not an influencer. I don't have, you know, personal wealth where I have unlimited funds. Like, I can't do this. And I had a lot of self-doubt in those early days, but I ended up getting connected with Annie Jackson at Credo Beauty. And because I knew just selling in my stores wasn't going to be enough. We were small local stores. And when you work with a manufacturer, you have all these like very high minimum order quantities. So I met with Annie Jackson and she was like, I love this concept. I flew out to San Francisco and Credo wrote me a PO for the line before I even went into production. And I actually had 2 POs from Credo and Goop. Goop was another, I'd sent a little cream sample to somebody at Goop and they called me and they said, we're gonna buy this line too. So having the sign on from 2 national retailers gave me the confidence to then go into production. But I didn't make the line and then find places to sell it. I found places to sell it before I made the line because I just knew that so many things could go wrong. And I don't mean to sound like negative or pessimist, but I mean, it's hard to do this. So.
Absolutely. It is, especially in this industry. It's just, I hate the word saturated, but it really is more and more saturated every day. So then how did you pick your favorites to work with? Did you kind of went with the plant experts? You looked for everything there was to offer, did the research on the benefits, and then how many did you choose to incorporate into your formulas as far as the wild plants?
We started with about 5 initially, and we've gone up since those initial 5. And what we really do, it's a function of a few things. It's what's prevalent on the private land that we're wildcrafting for, like what's growing naturally in abundance. Because when you wildcraft, you're going to take you're going to touch about 30% of the crop. You know, if you see the entire patch of arnica, you're not taking the whole patch up. You're only going to be plucking, you know, for lack of a better term, from about 30%. So you have to have abundance on the land. Then we have to test for benefits. You know, what are the benefits of some of the plants that we're using? Are they high in anthocyanins, antioxidants, vitamins? What is their lipid, omega fatty acids? So we want to know what's in the plants too. And then once I know those 2 things, I think about what product I want to formulate. So for our pore perfecting liquid with salicylic acid, I know I wanted a 2% BHA toner, liquid exfoliant. And I thought, what plant will offset the harshness of a 2% sal acid? And then I kind of play this matching game where I'm matching the clinical with the best plant that's going to amplify its benefits. And in that case, I picked borage because it's an anti-inflammatory, soothing plant. So I thought, let's offset the harshness of a 2% sal with borage. So it's kind of like this dating game, you know, of like, here's the clinical I want to use for the formula. What plant is going to suit that clinical best? And
that sounds like so much fun.
It is fun. It is actually, it's gotten to be somebody I was like, yeah, I just swipe right. And they're like, wait, did you just compare your formulation process to Tinder? And I was like, look, I've been married 20 years. I'm never on Tinder, but I guess that's what I kind of do. I start with my clinical and then it's a swipe through the plants and what plant is going to match it. And then that's how we go. We go from there.
This episode is brought to you by, well, me. Skinthusiast.com is your one-stop shop for all things skin, hair, and beauty. I have countless blog posts to educate you on all the skin concerns and most common skin questions I receive. We also have a complete skincare basics guide on our shop page, as well as the cutest In My Skin era crew necks. If you want to support the show, please head over to skinthusiast.com/shop, and don't forget to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. That's what's so cool too about doing it for as long as you have been. You have this kind of encyclopedia of all these active wild plants, and you can kind of just pick and choose what's going to match and work best in the formulation of the actives that you like. I love that. That's so fun.
What's exciting to me is we haven't even scratched the surface. So if I'm using call it a dozen plants from my backyard where I live, I have experts and professionals on the ground. And like I said, I had this team of botanists and naturalists and farmers and a lot of people that I work with locally. But they say there's over 200 species, you know, on this property. And I'm like, oh, I've only tapped into 12. So what else is out there that can change the physiology and the anatomy of the way our skin behaves and performs? And I think, you know, in an industry, skincare formulators and companies, you're only allowed to use what's on the menu, you know? So it's like, what's not on the menu that we haven't tapped yet? And that's where I really start to get excited. And then I get like overwhelmed because it's so much work.
Yeah, I'm sure I was just about to say. Exciting but overwhelming. Yeah. So at this point, about how often are you introducing a new wild plant into your encyclopedia?
It's when we find something, you know, I mean, I just introduced Ghostberry last year, and that became one of our top selling barrier repair moisturizers, putting Ghostberry in, you know, with neuropeptides because they call Ghostberry nature's Neosporin. So it's when I find something exciting that I'm really interested in is when we introduce a new plant. Our harvest season here in Jackson Hole is between July and September. So it's a really short harvest season. We have a long winter, you know, and these plants have to survive under 50 to 75 feet of snow throughout the duration of the winter. So it takes them a while to get their act together and come back. and sprout.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long winter for them, but they kind of sleep all winter. So we really only have a few short months to wildcraft and harvest and discover newness, but different plants come out at different times. You know, you have some that will be out by June. The berries really don't come out until September. So there's kind of a timeline, and we build out our harvest schedule throughout the summer based on the plant and when it's going to come to life.
That's amazing. Do you have a favorite ingredient to work with?
I love the berries. I think wildcrafting berries is so therapeutic. It's like just plucking them, like pluck, pluck. Like it's so comforting to me. So we're using huckleberry, we're using Juneberry, we're using chokecherry, and then the newest is ghosteberry. So I think the berries are my favorites to work with because it's just like a therapeutic harvest session.
And do you still go out there yourself and harvest?
I do.
Yeah.
I oversee, I would say more than 75% of the harvest that we do. I'm doing it myself with my local team on the ground. The only time I'm not there is if I'm traveling, but we have very sustainable harvesting methods and standards that are utilized whether I'm there or not. But I oversee most of them. In the summer, my nails are like, this is so gross, but like they're never done.
Sure.
They're like dirty,
I'm sure.
I'm such a grooming beauty girl, but in the summer you can only find me in yoga pants with like messy hair and nails because I'm like climbing up a mountain and digging my way through marshes and walking through bushes.
It's a labor of love.
It is.
That is so cool. I love that.
It is. And the animals are the only thing that scare me sometimes. So we have to have bear spray like on our vests and like on our packs, because once you start picking a huckleberry, for instance, or any type of berry, the bears have an amazing sense of smell, and it's like blood in the water for a shark, like they can smell that sweetness and they will come looking for our meal. So we haven't had any bear encounters. I've been charged by moose before. I mean, there's some crazy things that can happen out there for sure.
Wow, it makes us appreciate. The next time I'm applying my moisturizer, I'm going to be a lot more appreciative of how we got here.
We're risking our lives for beautiful skin across the country. Yeah.
Oh, that is just nuts. That's so cool, though. So what happens if you have a bad harvest? Like, let's say, especially with some of your more popular products. So I guess you're saying you're only using 30%. So I guess there's always an abundance of whatever the ingredient is that you need.
There's always an abundance. I've never seen something not come back or come out. What can happen is the amount of rain or moisture in April affects the size of the berry in September. So the plants have a couple months, and it's usually April and May, to bank those nutrients and bank that moisture that's going to have to last them throughout the summer. So we had a great rainfall season this April, so we're going to be looking really good by September. Last year was the opposite. We didn't have a lot of rain, and the berries came out like just a little kind of like crinkled. They weren't as fat, they weren't as plump, but we do have a 3-year reserve of all of our ingredients at all times. So we did figure that out pretty early on. We're just like, if something doesn't come out as lush as we expect it to, or if it doesn't meet our harvesting standards, we do have backup supplies that we've been able to preserve efficaciously so we can use them if we do have like a low rain season.
Do you ever look back and think like, wow, gosh, myself in Manhattan 10 years ago, I never imagined I'd be sitting here talking about a rainy season and predicting a crop?
Never.
And I bet that's like such a crazy thing for you.
It is a crazy thing, like this path and this journey that life took me on. And like, I'm telling you with the utmost amount of sincerity, like it was so organic. It was just like one step at a time. And I didn't leave Manhattan and think like, oh, let me go start a skincare line and do this. In fact, I was kind of running away from the industry. I was burnt out. I was done. Like, I was just like, I need a break. I can't work like this anymore. It's not good for my anxiety. It's not good for my anything, And yeah, if you gave me a glimpse into my future 10 years ago, even like 5 years ago, and told me I would be doing this and we would be in every Sephora door across the country, I would probably fall over, pass out. Like, this is very different than what I thought was going to happen with my life.
It's a really beautiful message too, because, I'm sure you were very passionate about your career in the early days as a beauty executive. And then, as you mentioned, you kind of lost a little bit of that fire because life, right? Like life takes a toll. And it just took you slowing down a little bit to then refine that passion in another way that was more organic to you as a person.
I think we all have it in us, Amy. We all have that inner voice where if something in our life isn't right, that little voice starts talking to us. And a lot of us will silence that voice because it's easier and there's more security in continuing on your same path, even if it's making you unhappy. And it takes a lot to listen to that and make a change. But I encourage anybody who is not happy or feels like something is wrong in their life, or they're missing something, or they have an idea that they dream about doing, and that self-doubt creeps in, and you say, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. You can, you can change it. We are the composers and conductors of our own lives. And if we're not going to precipitate change, nobody's going to do that for us. So I think that was the hardest part. It's like you jump off a cliff and you build your wings on the way down. Like you don't know where you're going to land or how you're going to land, but you have enough confidence in yourself that you're going to figure out how to land.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that it takes us some time to grow into that, right? As we mature and as we age, I think that's not something that we're born knowing how to do. But as we go through life, we kind of start to pick up a little bit more of that confidence and know that it is all going to be okay.
It's all going to be okay. And you have to believe in yourself. You have to have a good support network around you of people who lift you up and make you feel happy, and elevated and important. And I've learned that throughout my life, just to kind of like stop trying to please everybody, stop saying yes to everything, even if you don't want to do it. And you do, as we get older, we go through this like self-refinement period, I think, where we start to take out the things that aren't fulfilling to us. And yeah, everybody can do it. I didn't do anything super special or very difficult. I mean, anybody can follow their dreams. It's just you've got to believe in yourself, and you have to have a little bit of grit to take the punches in the stomach, because there's going to be quite a few along the way.
I want to talk about that a little bit, because when you first launched in Sephora, if I remember correctly, it was around the time of the pandemic or just pre-pandemic, but I remember it being kind of around that same time.
It was around that time. And when we launched in Sephora, I knew I wanted Sephora as a partner. I had worked with them in the past. I think nobody builds brands or supports companies like Sephora. They're incredibly supportive, and knew I wanted them as a partner. I had tried for years to get in. They finally said yes, and they said online only, because you are an indie small brand. Space in stores is incredibly competitive. So we're going to launch you online. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And they gave me a weekly goal. And I thought, okay, I can do this too. Then the pandemic hit. And it was March of 2020. I think I launched on like March 4th.
Oh my
and then
gosh, literally
like
days before.
News was coming out, and everybody was talking about this virus or this sickness, and I was just like clicking the channels and like passing it. Like no one was paying attention at first. And then it became very serious and something that everybody paid attention to. And our online sales at Sephora went from doing pretty well to like off a cliff. I mean, everybody started buying hand sanitizer and toilet paper, and everybody was like stocking up on like life essentials and like canned goods, and nobody was thinking about skincare. So about a month in, I was like, you know what? This is over. Like, I'm never getting to stores. I'm like, this is like, my sales are abysmal. Like, I'm never going to get shelf space. And miraculously, we just hung in there. And a few months later, around July, August, there was kind of this online skincare boom, or this moment, because people across the country find themselves looking at their faces all day on a Zoom or a Google Meets. And never before had we interacted like that. It was either a conference call or an in-person meeting, really. So people were like, wow, my wrinkles, my hyperpigmentation, my fine lines, my breakouts look bad. And there was this boom of skincare and things just really started picking up. It was like July of 2020 and we were there for it as a new brand, well merchandised on the site, and it just took off. And you know, we were able to ride through that storm, and then we got shelf space. We got our shelf space a year later.
That's amazing. So what initially seemed like the worst timing possible actually ended up being part of your success story because you were timed perfectly for this boom in skincare, you know, interest and education and all the things we're still seeing on social media now.
100%. You know, it was, yeah, we took some lemons and we were able to make lemonade, and we found, you know, the silver lining in that very dark cloud. And yeah, it's ever since it's been growing. So I'm very grateful. I'm very appreciative. I feel humbled every day. And I've just spent my life trying to help others, you know, in the same position who may want to start something, but like lack the self-esteem or the motivation. So now I'm trying to pass it forward to other people.
I actually was browsing some of your products on Sephora during the sale, and I noticed, so, you know, as a derm provider, the term clean isn't as exciting to me because we know it's not really a regulated term. But what really excited me was that you guys have a Planet Aware badge, and I've never seen that before. Can you tell me, like, what does that mean? What does it mean for you and for the brand?
Planet Aware is a program that Sephora started. I think they rolled it out a couple years ago. In their hundreds of clean brands, only a small amount of brands fit that portfolio. And what that means is that in addition to using sustainable ingredients and recyclable packaging, you actually have another give back initiative. Like you are doing something above and beyond to give back to the ecosystem. And for us at Alpen, it is our national park restoration initiative. So when I started the brand, I knew I wanted to do something, and I was like, oh gosh, what am I gonna do? I knew we were gonna do sustainable formulas and ingredient sourcing. I knew we were gonna do recyclable packaging, but that to me was a given. It's like, duh, like you have to do that stuff. It's just like, it's table stakes, you know, at this time of what we're going through in the planet. But I wanted something extra, and I partnered with our local national park, which is the Grand Teton National Park Foundation, to contribute a portion of every sale to rewilding that national park. Because when the settlers came 100 years ago, they bulldozed or plowed over 5,000 acres of the park so they could set up their homesteading, which they had to do it at the time. They didn't know, but now the park is really damaged. So with our partnership, we've helped rewild over 1,100 acres to date. And as the brand continues to grow, our donation grows because it's a portion of every sale. So my goal is once we hit the 5,000 acre restoration here in our local park in Grand Teton, to start marching across the country to the other national parks that need restoration funding, because it's not really something the government funds. You know, if the parks, they apply for these grants, and it usually goes towards a visitor center or a bigger parking lot, or how do we bring more people in to the park, but nobody's really restoring the flora and the fauna, like everything that is supposed to be there. So that became a big, that really pulled at my heartstrings just personally. So that's how we earned that badge, is in addition to recyclable packaging and vegan formulas and sustainable sourcing, we have that give back initiative that is turned into a rather large donation at this point every year.
That's amazing. That makes me a little emotional. That's really, really cool. I'm sure you feel this way after becoming a mom. You just want to make sure that we can preserve as much of this beautiful planet as possible for our kids and for their kids. And it's scary, it's terrifying. And even looking back from when we were children, what has changed so much and what we no longer get to appreciate because it's been ruined. And so I love that you guys are doing that. I think it's just really speaks to you as a brand, to your brand ethos. And I want to come check it out. I'm going to come and see. Maybe we'll do a little family trip.
Yes.
Because I've always wanted to go to Jackson Hole, and now this conversation just cements that for me. I'm going to have to come check out this park.
Come
That's
in the
just
summer.
incredible.
No, we're going to Wildcraft. We'll see the Alpen Glow. The brand was named Alpyn Beauty after Alpen Glow, which is this pink light that kind of every summer in the morning and the night, we start our day with this pinkish purpley sky. And it was so inspiring to me when I moved here, and the brand is named after the Alpen Glow, but we'll do some harvesting like in the Alpen Glow, and I'll show you the park
beautiful.
Restoration. And I was at the park last summer, and I stepped in buffalo poop, and it was like, I've never been happier in my life to step in poop, because the restoration is working and the animals are starting to come back to the area that we restored. We're starting to get like the natural return of the animals that had abandoned these 5,000 acres because there was nothing to eat. There was no place to nest. There was no, there was no shelter. And like, I've never been so happy to step in poop in my entire life. I was like ecstatic. It was all over my shoes, and I was just like grinning from ear to ear.
Oh, that must feel so rewarding that you get to be a part of that. That's so cool.
It is. It's like we want to make a difference, and everything in life is a full circle relationship. It's like even in our personal relationships, we give and we take, but you have to be able to give if you're wanting to take. So it's, these plants that we're harvesting, even though we're doing it sustainably, we are taking from them and we're borrowing, these nutrients. And that just made sense to me. It's like, how can I, if these plants are restoring our skin, how can I help restore their home where they live? So it's a relationship of give and take. It's not just like one-sided, take.
And that's something we're going to have to continue to learn as a human species. If we want to survive on this planet, it has to be a give and take. We can't just take and expect the planet to still produce for us.
Completely. Everything in life. And these national parks are like the most fragile pieces of glass. It's like they are the last living intact pieces of our ecosystem that have mass quantities. And like they have to stay functioning and because they are the anchor to like a tree that grows in the suburbs of New Jersey, like everything's connected under the surface of the earth. So these parks have to stay, they have to be well maintained, and they have to stay intact as long as possible. It's really important. But I do think there's hope. I mean, I get depressed sometimes, and then I'm just like, look, like there's hope. This planet is very resilient. And if everybody does one small little thing, that can make a very big change and a very large impact. So it's like, that's our small thing to do as a brand.
Well, it's not small. It's really incredible what you guys are doing. So thank you for taking that initiative. And I want to switch gears a little bit. A lot of my followers live in dry, arid parts of the country. And I know my skin when I travel, because my skin is so used to humidity levels, when I travel even home to Ohio, where it's still humid but less so, I really feel it in my skin. So can you kind of craft us a simple regimen for somebody who's dealing with really dry skin?
I am I think cleanse, moisturize, sunscreen. I mean, if you're going to start off just anywhere, very, very simple. I believe in cleansing morning and night. I think you accumulate so much dead skin cell buildup on your face. Some people are like, oh, if you wash at night, you don't have to wash in the morning. I'm like, I brush my teeth at night, but of course I wake up and brush my teeth in the morning. Like a lot happens overnight. 2 cleanses a day, a really, really good moisturizer, something I'm into neuropeptides right now. I love the neuropeptides, ceramides. I'm a big fan of hyaluronic acid still. I love hyaluronic acid in different molecular levels, but a really good moisturizer to kind of just maintain that moisture barrier. And then of course, sunscreen. I mean, sunscreen is so important. And I tell people all the time, it's like, even if we're skiing and it's snowing out, you're still getting that like there doesn't have to be sun or a feeling of heat for you to protect your skin. And I had so many clients in the beauty stores that would come in and they'd be like, in the winter, I don't use anything because it's cloudy. And I'm like, no, that's like so wrong. Like you have to still use your sunscreen no matter what, when you go out in the day.
I probably sound like a broken record to my audience, but I always tell my audience, my patients, don't even waste your money on skincare if you're not going to wear sunscreen, because that UV exposure, rain or shine, is going to undo everything you're trying to do with your skincare
everything.
anyways.
It's like your shield. It's like your protective barrier. Like, why would you not? But I think, yeah, a really good moisturizer and then a good cleansing routine or exfoliation. If you're really dry, find a gentle exfoliator to just really slough off all that debris, all that dry skin. Like, as soon as that's detached, your moisturizer is going to work even better for you. So
yeah, and I love the feeling after a very gentle exfoliation of applying your skincare. Everything just feels so smooth and you can feel it penetrating better.
Silky, like satin.
Yeah.
It's such a big thing. And I used to have women come into the stores and they would buy this like $200 moisturizer, not from my brand. We don't have anything $200, but they would buy a $200 moisturizer and I would say, "What are you exfoliating with?" And they would say, "I don't exfoliate." And I'm like, "Why would you spend $200 on this moisturizer and not properly cleanse and exfoliate prior to applying it?" Like, it's almost like you're wasting it. Same thing with your sunscreen analogy. It's like, if you're not wearing sunscreen, you shouldn't even be, what's the point in spending money on an anti-aging routine or something to make your skin look better? It's not going to work.
Well, your team generously gave the audience a code, so they get 15% off if they use the code Amy15. So if someone's new to the brand, where should they start?
If they're new to the brand, I would recommend, so the two products that are our top sellers right now are the Ghost Berry Barrier Repair Cream. And this is barrier repair, but it has that neuropeptide complex. So it works on expression lines, and wrinkles. So it's really like barrier repair with a side dish of deep wrinkle repair. And I see a difference with that product in just 3 days of use. The other product that is doing really well right now is Instant Bright Eye. It's an under eye.
Oh yeah, I love that one. It's so good.
Oh yeah, you've used it. I thank you so much for that. I remember
I was lucky enough to get my hands on it before it sold out.
Yes, that's like the big word. It sold out 3 times at Sephora within the first 2 weeks of launch, and it's like a double-edged sword. You're happy that people like it, but then you're so bummed that you're not able to send it to people who want it. But that's an under eye dark circle plumping cream, and it works so beautifully under concealer. So I'll prep my concealer application in the morning with the Instant Bright Eye, and then I also use it at night. So those are 2 really good entry points. Melt Moisturizer is for all skin types. That's just for everybody. And people with oily or combo skin love the way it dries matte. And then the Pore Perfecting is our 2% BHA. That's our liquid exfoliator, because we've talked about exfoliation. That's a really effective product and Allure Best of Beauty winner this year. And a very friendly entry-level price point at $39. So
okay, those are such great tips. And what is your personal holy grail skincare product? Maybe give us one from the brand and one not from your brand.
Okay, so mine from the brand is the Ghost Berry. I use that morning and night. It has made a visible difference in my skin. Like, I will not travel, I will not do anything without that Ghost Berry moisturizer. Sunscreen would be my second one. And I play and dabble with a lot of different sunscreens. I love Suntegrity. I think they have beautiful formulas and sunscreens. I think she does such a good job. I also love Supergoop. I've been using Supergoop for a long time. It's just like my ride or die. Glow Screen is like where it's at
Glow
for
Screen
me.
is so good.
It just works for me. I just like, I use it pretty religiously.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that one too. Do you have plans to ever do a sunscreen?
I'm working on it right now. I'm working on it. It's mineral formulations are really tough. And then when you start stripping out the things that we don't formulate with, it makes something that's already hard even harder. So we are in development now. We've been in development for about 6 months. So I think it's going to be ready by early 2025. Crossing fingers.
That's exciting. I can't wait. And what is your most underrated skincare tip?
My most underrated tip is, it sounds so easy, but nobody does it. Leave your cleanser on as a mask. I like to apply a cleanser as a mask, and I let it sit on my skin for 5 to 10 minutes, because the evolution of cleansers this day and age, they have so many beautiful actives, and to put it on and then rinse it off immediately, you're not really giving the ingredients their chance to penetrate and work themselves into the skin. So our Juneberry cleanser is like a white cream, and I put it on like a mask.
Lovely.
I get into the shower, I'll do everything I need to do. I'll wash my hair, I'll shave, blah, blah, blah. But I let it sit for 5-10 minutes. So let your cleanser sit a little bit longer, I think you'll be really happy with the results once you rinse.
That's a fantastic tip. I love that one. Okay, very last question. If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
I would say stop worrying. Everything's going to turn out all right, is what I would say. Don't have stress and high anxiety levels about your job, the way you look. You know, don't try to be something that you're not. Just follow your heart and follow your soul, and your life is going to be just fine. And enjoy those collagen levels that you have.
Yes.
enjoy that naturally plump, juicy skin, because it doesn't stay that way forever, is what I would tell my younger self. Also,
I love looking back at the old photos where at the time I thought my face was too round and fat, and I'm like, oh man, I miss that round fat face.
Can you imagine? And now with my children, so I have a 6 and an 8-year-old little boy, I just like squeeze their cheeks, and I just like I love to look at their lineless foreheads, and I'm just like, gosh, it's like it's the most beautiful.
Perfection.
It's skin at its best, plump and juicy, and like same thing. I look at pictures when I was 20 years ago. I'm like, wow, like at the time I remember taking that picture and thinking I look horrible, and now I look at it and I'm like, God, I wish I looked like that again.
Exactly.
It would be amazing.
I know. Lessons of life, right?
Yeah, lessons of
That's
life.
how it goes. Well, thank you so much, Kendra, for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed this episode, and I know the audience is really going to like it too.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a dream come true to spend time with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Kendra is so inspiring. I hope that you guys love that episode as much as I did. And you can use code Amy15 for 15% at alpenbeauty.com. That's ALPYNBEAUTY.com. And one lucky winner is also going to win a box of Kendra's favorite products. So all that you have to do is follow me at Amy Koberling and follow Alpyn Beauty on Instagram. I'll leave all those details below. And then let us know in the reel that I posted about this episode what your biggest key takeaway was from listening to it. And one lucky winner is going to win a box of our favorites. As always, thank you so much for listening. I cannot wait for you guys to listen to next week's episode. It's going to be a good one. So I will talk to you next week, Skin Enthusiasts. I wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for taking the time to rate and review the show. There was an especially sweet one that I read today from Mo Monroe that said, I stumbled across Amy's Instagram not too long ago, and I immediately loved the content she was sharing with us and found out she has a podcast. So I've been listening to the episodes, and the episodes are so valuable. I love how Amy has brought in experts in each area to discuss topics that are hard for us to get. That is always my goal. I love that she said that. The passion that exudes from Amy and these experts to share knowledge and inform the public are such a blessing, and I'm so thankful. This review was so kind, and if this is you, Mo Monroe, please slide into my DMs or send me an email, amy@skinthusiast.com, letting me know that this is your review, and I want to just send you a little box of Skin Enthusiast goodies as a thank you.